Are there psychological forces that are holding patriarchy in place? I mean, unwittingly, outside of our awareness. So we're really not aware of what we're doing. And if we're really committed to patriarchy not persisting, because let me just say that the opposite of patriarchy is democracy. That is, based on a premise of equal voice, that everyone has an equal voice. John Bowlby was a British psychologist during the war when children were sent from London out into the country to Oxford, where he was teaching, to keep them safe from the bombing. And he noticed how devastated young children were when they were separated from their caretakers. And then he observed children in hospital and so forth, and he began with a filmmaker, Robertson, to film children's responses to loss. There's a 2-minute, literally a 2-minute YouTube video, which is actually almost unbearable to watch, so I recommend it highly to you. It's called the still face experiment. Still face means a face that's not responsive. I noticed some of you are nodding, so you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, in the still face experiment, there's a mother, or you could have a father, but you have an infant, 1 year old, and the mother is playing with the infant. And you know how that goes, cooing and playing and so forth, and the infant points and the mother looks and so forth. And then the experimenter, in this case Edward Tronick, a psychologist, instructs the mother to make her face non-responsive. So she turns away, and when she turns back, she's no longer responsive. And this is actually so fascinating because in literally a nanosecond, this 1-year-old baby picks up the break in connection. And you see the baby, it looks completely puzzled. What happened? I mean, if you take this into the everyday, how many times in the everyday do we actually clock that we thought we were in connection and we feel like we've suddenly lost connection? Now, the interesting thing, the baby's first move is to move to repair the break in connection. The baby does everything that the baby had done to get the mother's response. The baby points, the baby makes sounds and everything else, and the mother doesn't respond. This is the unbearable part. And then you see the baby's posture becomes rigid. And you see pleasure drain from the baby's body and face, and you hear this change in voice, that this cadenced relational voice, talking back and forth, suddenly turns into this really unbearable high-pitched screeching. Finally, the 2-minute end, still face period ends. It feels like forever. And the mother turns around and says, "Oh, baby," The baby re-engages, and there's such a sense of relief. So what you think is, as humans, we are basically relational responsive creatures. So you have loss. The immediate response, this is Bowlby, is you protest the loss of relationship, and you move to repair it. If that move is ineffective, then, and this is Bowlby's work, what follows is first despair and then detachment. So our first discovery was a trajectory which I and my students at Harvard, when we did these studies of girls' development, girls reaching adolescence, protest when they feel they can no longer say what they're feeling and thinking and other people will be with them, that they protest this loss of connection, and this healthy resistance to losing connection turns into a political resistance because they're basically protesting the structures of patriarchy. And then that political resistance, if it's ineffective, then it's followed by despair and detachment. So the trajectory, and we saw that in girls, and then we saw it in young boys between 4 and 7.